Welcome back, everyone. I have a cold. There was supposed to be a video last week, but it was just impossible to do because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get any voice out of me. So I did have the camera rolling a little bit, but really all I did was just plastering. So the doorway to the attic is totally gone now. And I did do a repair in one of the bedrooms. There was a leak in the ceiling, I guess, at one time. And that got fixed up along with all the nail holes in all three bedrooms. Those got patched over. And the kitchen door going up the stairs, that got covered over and is pretty much invisible now. So what I'm going to do this week, which is what I was supposed to have done last week, is get the tile done in the bathroom. So I'm going to start with the floor tile. When I was vacuuming all the dust up in here, I saw that this board was starting to collapse into the floor. So I'm going to get this fixed up before I get the underlayment put down in here. Why it was doing that was because there was support here from a joist, but they didn't put one over here on this side. So I'm going to go put one in now. Got a scrap piece of 2x4, which I'm going to screw on over here. And that'll give me some support for that floorboard. That looks pretty good. All right, on to the underlayment. I'm using fiber cement board for the underlayment. Hardibacker is the brand I'm using, and it comes in 3x5 foot sheets by either a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch thick. But for a tile floor, 1/4 inch is the right size you need. I'm just transferring over the numbers from the 3 obstacles here. I got this box and the water line and the waistline. And I think I'm starting with the hardest piece. I'm going to start off by cutting out the 2 easy holes on this piece with a hole saw. Now, don't use your really good hole saws when you're doing this because this is cement board, and what it's going to do is it's just going to wear down the teeth on your really good tools, and then you're going to be all upset when you have to go buy a new set. So what I do is I buy the real cheap sets from Harbor Freight, and they come in all different sizes, and they are perfect for this because they are very disposable and inexpensive to replace. It does get a little dusty when you're using the hole saw, so it does help to wear a mask when you're cutting through it. To do the straight cuts, the manufacturer says this stuff scores and snaps like drywall. But I have found that drywall is a whole lot easier to score and snap than this stuff is. So what I use to cut it is this thing. This is a shear attachment for any electric drill. It is made by Malco, and I will leave a link to where to buy this thing in the description box below. So what I'm doing is I'm lining up the slot on the nose of the shear with the line that I'm going to cut along, and I push the trigger on the drill and it just starts chewing its way all the way down that line, hardly creating any dust. And that's really the key here because this stuff contains silica, and some people say that silica is the new asbestos because once you inhale it, it gets stuck in your lungs and it does lead to COPD after long-term use. So it's always good to wear a respirator whenever you're using this stuff. That's why I use this tool instead of using a circular saw and creating a whole bunch of dust. I got the board down and everything is looking pretty good. There's one spot over here that didn't turn out exactly the way I'd hoped. This hole didn't get as centered as I'd like for the water line, but the pipe still fits up through. This one, which is more important than that one, there had to have been an equal gap all the way around because there's going to be a toilet flange over top of this pipe, and it needs to go down below the height of this board. So I think that'll fit just fine. One other thing is the manufacturer says that there needs to be 1/8 inch gap between the board and the wall all the way around, and there is, so that's good. So now it's on to the next piece. The next two pieces are similar to the first. Just drilling out the holes for the cold and hot water lines for the sink. Then setting the board into place. I cut the next piece to size, followed by cutting out the hole for the heat register. Then I try a failed attempt at scoring and snapping the board and putting the extra piece back in that shouldn't have broke out, along with the piece on the other side of the register. Now it's on to the other side of the room to cut the next two pieces to size and then to slide them both into place. And finally, the little piece in the closet gets laid down. Now that all the pieces are in, it's time to take them back up again. I know, why, right? Well, the manufacturer says that the stuff gets glued down with thinset mortar. So that is what we're gonna do. Everything comes out of the room, including you, Caesar. So come on, let's go. This is the brand thinset mortar I'll be using. It is a non-modified thinset mortar, though the manufacturer said you can use a modified thinset to attach the Hardibacker board to the floor. I'll be mixing it up in a 3-gallon bucket with a paddle mixer attached to my electric drill. And I won't be using any secondhand kitchen tools to mix this stuff up today. The instructions say to add 5 to 6 quarts cold water, followed by half a bag of the powdered mix. Then, mixing it up with a paddle mixer, I try to achieve a mayonnaise type consistency. Now I have to let it sit 5 to 10 minutes so any leftover powder can absorb up the water. One more quick mix with a paddle mixer, and it's ready to go. I'm just gonna dump some of this out on the floor. That looks pretty good. And I'm gonna start troweling it out. This is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch notch trowel. So I just wanna get it spread out. The other side of the trowel doesn't have notches on it, so it's easier to push around with that end. So just smooth it out as far as I can, spread it out as far as I can. Then I'm just going to take the notch side and just drag across like that. I don't want to have any heavy buildup anywhere, so there won't be any lumps in the floor. This is just, the notch side just helps even out how much mortar there is all over the floor. The mortar looks pretty even. Now it's time to put the backer board back in. All right, this side of the room is done. Now to repeat the same process on the other side. When I put the pieces back in, not only do I want to keep the board an 1/8 of an inch from the wall, but I want to keep an 1/8 of an inch gap between all the other pieces too. Just 2 more pieces to go, then I'm done with this step. Maybe some of you are thinking that I just wasted my time by adhering the backer board to the subfloor with thinset. And I'll have to tell you that this is the first time that I've ever done it that way, according to the way the manufacturer wanted me to. And I've been laying tile in bathrooms and kitchens for about 20 years now, and I have never had a crack in a tile or a crack in a grout line. So Yeah, maybe I did just waste my time, but at least I wanted to show you how the manufacturer wanted it done. So based on my experience, I'm gonna leave the decision up to you for when you do your own tile project, whether you should skip that step or not. So what I've always done in the past was just screw it down, and these are screws made by Backer On. They are ceramic coated, and they have sort of a drill bit built into the head so that when they're driven into the backer board, they go in nice and flush. So on the backer board, they have these little indents. They're about 8 inches apart, and wherever there is one of those, a screw goes in. So sit back and enjoy a time-lapse scene while I get all this done. The last thing to do before the tile goes down, and the last thing for me to do today, because as you can see, it's already nighttime out there, is to get these joints taken care of. Now I have some fiberglass mesh tape, and this is very similar to what you would use for drywall, except this is a little bit heavier duty, and it's alkali resistant, so it will resist breaking down from being in contact with the thinset mortar. So it's got a sticky backing just like the fiberglass mesh tape, and it goes down exactly the same way as it does on drywall. And then I just take some thinset mortar on my 3-inch trowel and drag it across there. So I put it on pretty thin, and I don't want to leave any lumps behind because that will just get in the way of the next step when I put the thinset down for when I'm ready to lay the tile. All right, looks pretty good. I forgot there's just one more thing I gotta do tonight, and that was to back butter these little pieces around the heater grate here and glue them on. They're too thin to put a screw into, so they would just shatter if I did that. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of this stuff on the back and glue them into place. All right. It looks good. Okay, I'll see you back in the morning and we can install some tile. Good morning. Ready to start some tile? Mohawk Forever Style is the brand of floor tile I chose for the bathroom. And this is what it looks like outside the box. It is a wood look ceramic floor tile, and I specifically chose the wood look for the bathroom because of the type of floor that I covered up in there. I really love all the wood floors all over the house as well as in the bathroom, and I wish I could have kept the wood floor in there, but years of tenants have proven to me that a wood floor in a bathroom is just a horrible idea. From water damage to just general abuse and scuffing and everything like that. It's just one of the worst rooms in the house is going to get damaged. So I have put ceramic tile in all the apartments I have, as well as houses, and it's proven to be very good against water damage, as well as easy cleanup, whether it be the tenant or me having to clean up after they move out. Something nice about here is it's got 3 times the wear guard, so I'm thinking that the color, as well as the texture, the pattern of this tile, is going to hold up really, really well for many years. Another nice thing is it's got a really rough texture on there. I don't know if you can hear that. Nice and rough. And the one thing you don't want to have in a bathroom is a smooth tile, like a granite or a marble, something really, really reflective. Because if any water ever gets spilled on there, someone could easily slip and fall on that and hurt themselves. And the same thing if you had if a tenant had a non-rubber backed bath mat outside the tub and they were to step out of the shower onto a unbacked mat on a smooth floor, the mat could just slide right out from under them and they could hurt themselves that way. But with the wonderful gripping ability of this tile, I don't think that could ever happen. So I'm really, really enjoying the quality of this tile. I laid out a row of floor tile with 1/16 inch spacers in between. And I did that because I wanted to see where things were going to end up on this side of the room. And I'm glad I did that because I am 1 3/4 inches from the wall, which means I'm going to have to cut a very narrow tile to fill in the gap on this side. And I don't think that tile is going to look very good over there. You're going to see it every time you walk in and out of the bathroom. So I think it's best that I put that tile over on this side where it'll be better hidden, and I think it'll make the floor look a whole lot better. Another thing I want to do is I want to offset each tile. I don't want to have them in a straight line like this because that really doesn't look like a real wood floor. So each tile is 3 feet long, and if I divide that into thirds, I will have an offset of 12 inches. So let me pull this one out to 1 foot, and I'll skip this one and I'll pull this one out to 2 feet. Now if I fill in the blanks here with other tile, like that, it starts to really look like a real wood floor. To cut the tile into 1 and 2 foot pieces, I am using my wet saw from Harbor Freight. Now, tools from Harbor Freight, they can either be like really good or really bad, and you're never really sure what you're gonna get until you try it. But I've had this thing for probably 7 years now, and it is one really good saw. This is their brick saw, and not only does it cut brick really well, but it cuts ceramic tile just excellent, as well as granite, marble, cement products. And it's got a pump in there which sits in a tray of water, and it sends that through a hose all the way over here to the diamond blade, which helps lubricate as it cuts. And it also sprays an awful lot of water out the back, so which is why I have the plastic set up here. It's on the floor and on the wall. And if I can, I like to use this thing outside, but I'm on the 2nd floor, and it's just be a lot of work going up and down the stairs getting all my tile cuts done. So I'm being lazy, and I have it set up right here. I'm putting a mark at 12 inches, so when I run this through the saw, I will get a 1 foot piece and a 2 foot piece. I have to wear ear protection while I use this saw because it is very, very loud. I push the tile through the saw at a slow and steady pace. That way it minimizes the amount of chipping of the tile as it goes past the blade. I got a good start on the number of staggered pieces I need. Now I'm going to work on the little slender pieces that start off the room. I tried cutting this tile on the wet saw, but it didn't work out because it's just too long. So what I'm going to do is use this. This is my battery-powered right-angle grinder, and I put a wet, dry diamond blade on here. And I can't use it wet because I don't want to get the tool damaged by water, so I'm going to use it dry. The problem with that is I got to do it outside because this is going to kick up an awful lot of dust. So definitely need the ear protection for this one. It's a very noisy tool, and definitely need the dust mask. I'm cutting the tile on the porch floor, which is made of cement. I put down a scrap piece of plywood under the tile just so I wouldn't harm the porch by mistake. I cut through the tile slowly and evenly, trying not to chip up the edge, but that's almost impossible with a dry blade. Okay, so the first piece is going to be 1 foot, 2 foot, or 3 feet long. So let me measure things out here and see where things are going to fall. And 12 inches comes to, wow, right in the middle of that pipe. So that is super convenient. I thought I was going to have to drill a hole in this thing, but I don't have to now. Looks like I can just cut a small piece here, about 3.5 inches wide, and notch that around the pipe and then continue on with a full piece. That looks pretty good. Now on to the next piece. This is the drain for the sink, and it's just sticking out, not even a 1/4 of an inch out from the wall. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a curve here with my pencil, and I'm going to go outside and notch it with the right angle grinder. The last obstacle in this row is the heater vent, so I'm just going to mark the piece here and then cut it. Then mark out for the heater vent and then cut out that little piece with the right angle grinder. What you're not seeing off camera is after I made that first notch, the piece snapped off on my left hand, followed by the front piece. So I was afraid this was going to happen, but I'm glad it happened here instead of after I installed it in the floor, because now my stress fractures are now taken care of. Also, after the register cover's in place, I don't think you're going to see these cracks. One last thing, the manufacturer of the bathtub made this strange little bulge coming out the bottom, which makes it really hard to put tile around it. So I was going to put a little notch in the tile, thinking that that would fill this hole in pretty well. But now that this tile breaks really easily with tiny pieces, I am not going to do that. This pencil represents the thickness of the tile, which is going to go in the wall. So you're really not going to see very much of that left over there. So if I fill it in with a grout, I think it'll be just fine. Before I go any farther with the dry fitting, I want to make a reference line from this wall out just a couple feet. So I'm going to place a mark here from this corner and then one on the other side, and then snap a line between the two. So the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that the first row is as straight as possible. I know the wall is a little wavy, so if I just went by the wall without the line, that waviness would transfer out into the room. The next row starts off with a 2 foot piece, so I'm just going to mark where it's going to start on the other side of this box and then go cut it. There it is, followed by a full piece. This next piece looks like loads of fun. So I'm just transferring over the measurements for the hot pipe and the one for the cold. And now I can drill out both the holes with my diamond hole saw. I am so glad that fits. Finally, I have to mark out the last 2 pieces for the heat register and then cut them both on the wet saw. On to the last obstacle in the room, the stinky toilet hole. So I need a 4-inch hole drilled into this tile to make sure that the toilet flange fits over it and can go past it. I did bring over a 4-inch hole saw for my drill. I'm not so sure this is going to work because it's not my finest tool. I've only used this thing on cutting holes in concrete, and it does a fair job for that, but it's a little worn out. I don't really feel much diamond dust left on here, so if it throws a bunch of sparks or cracks the tile in half, then I'm going to have to find another way to do it. This is my template. It is a replacement toilet flange, but has a nice 4 1/8 inch hole on the inside, so it's going to make a really good circle that I need for when I drill with the hole saw. Wish me luck. All right, that turned out terrible. Let me try this other way. Okay, second attempt. The only tool I have left to cut this out is the right angle grinder, and I know if I start doing that, it's going to want to break somewhere off in one of these directions. So I better put a cut right down the middle here to prevent that from happening, and I can just finish the rest out easier with the right angle grinder. Oh, that turned out so much better. And the seam back here, you'll never see it because it'll be covered up by the toilet. I'm done dry fitting, all the complicated parts are cut, and the rest of the tiles for the room I think are already cut to size. So I'm just going to finish numbering up here and get these tiles out of the room. I mixed up a batch of thinset mortar, and this stuff is a little bit different than what I used to attach the backer board to the floor. This is a modified thinset, which means it has polymers in it, which aid in the adhesion between the tile and the backer board. Also, it is a stronger mix, which means it will keep the tile from cracking over the years. So I gotta let this stuff set up for about 5 to 10 more minutes, and while that is happening, I'm gonna vacuum up the floor in here because I tracked in a lot of sawdust and other things in my shoes while I was doing the dry fit of the tile. I'm putting down a nice sized blob of mortar onto the floor. Then I'm spreading it out kind of thick with the flat side of the trowel. While I'm doing this, I don't want to cover up my reference line from the wall. I'm using a different notch trowel from before. It's still 1/4 inch wide, but the height of the notch has changed to 3/8 of an inch. And that's because I'm using a new type of tile spacer that I'll show you in a little bit. I'm going over the mortar a few times, making sure I don't have any excess buildup. Also, I want to have all the trowel lines going the same direction so air has a way to escape when I press the tiles down into the mortar. Each tile gets a thin layer of mortar applied to the back. This is a very important step in making sure there is good adhesion between the tile and the floor. It's really easy to want to skip this step because it feels like a real time waster, but in the long run, it'll keep the tiles from cracking. Setting the tile is pretty easy. I start by putting one end of the tile down next to the previous tile, then aligning the long edge of the tile to the one behind it before dropping it into the wet mortar. I press the tile down gently, rocking it back and forth, squeezing out the air beneath it, making a solid connection to the floor. Before I get too far along with the tile, I check against my reference line to the wall to make sure all the tiles are running in a straight line. Now, onto those tile spacers. These are by QEP and are available at Home Depot, though there are other similar brands out there that look and work the same way. The spacers just slide under the tile into the wet mortar. For these tiles, I've been putting 2 spacers under each end and 3 to 4 on the longer sides. The area I'm covering in the bathroom is about 8 by 9 feet, so I got the pack of 300 and I expect to be using almost all of them. When 2 tiles get set together, a yellow wedge gets inserted through the hole of the spacer, causing both tiles to be set at equal level. This creates a more uniform and comfortable floor to walk on. Last thing I want to mention is working with mortar can be really messy. It gets all over your hands and squeezes up through the grout joints. So it's a good idea to have a bucket of clean water and a damp sponge ready to clean up and wipe away any excess mortar. I've got the first 4 rows done. All the complicated cuts and holes are complete. Now it's time to get this room finished up with some time lapse. it's another long night for me, and it's already after dark. So one last thing I want to do tonight, and that is to install this marble threshold at the doorway. First thing I need to do is trim off some of this doorstop. So I already have my piece of backer board pre-cut for the threshold, and I'm just going to put another piece on top of that. That's going to represent the thickness of the mortar between the threshold and the backer board, and then put my threshold on top of that, so that will give me the height I'm looking for, so I can trim it off with my oscillating saw. But I want to put a small piece of tape here on top of it, so when I'm using the saw, I don't want to scrape up the nice shiny finish on my threshold. Same process as before, spreading out a little bit of thinset onto the floor and pressing the backer board into it, followed by the backer board screws. Then the next layer of thinset goes down. Just like the tile, I put a thin layer of thinset on the back. I carefully slide the threshold into place, pressing it firmly into the thinset. Finally, I clean up any leftover bits of thinset with a damp sponge. Okay, I'm done for tonight. Tomorrow morning I'll be back to get rid of all these tile spacers and to start some grouting. I watched a video of how to remove these spacers, and it's on YouTube, it's on Home Depot's channel. Don't go watching it right now. Please stick around for a few more minutes. There's some funny outtakes at the end, so just stay where you are. But on that video, there was a guy, he was just kicking these clips off with his shoe. And if you read the comments on there, it's not like that at all. People who have done these, use these clips before, they say, no, you can't kick them off. They don't, most of them stay right where they are. So I'm gonna give it a shot for myself and see what happens. I am surprised that this is working as well as it is. After reading those comments, I thought this was going to take forever to get these things out of here. I brought my locking pliers over because I thought I'd have to manually rip every one of these things off, but so far it's working really well. I did find one thing: if you kick them from the back side, the high point of the wedge here, they seem to be shearing off every time. So I'm going to get back to it on the other side of the room. I really hurt my toes kicking all those spacers off. Next time, I'm gonna have to wear my steel-toed boots. Not all the spacers came off, unfortunately. Some are half connected, others are still all the way there, but I have my locking pliers. I'm gonna give it a shot to see if I can pull them off with these things. I got my pliers tightened down as far as they'll go, and I wanna see what happens. Clamp it on and, oh, look at that. Well, that was easy. Let me try that again. Huh. I think I found a new way of doing this. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is the way I'm going to do it from now on. It's really going to save the pain in my toes. The yellow wedges get saved for the next tiling job, and these leftover spacer parts get thrown in the garbage. There's just a few places around the room where the spacers used to be that some thinset squeezed up into the grout joints. I'm just going to take it out with my utility knife and like this. Sorry for the blackboard, nails on the blackboard sound effect. That looks pretty good. Another one over here. Just a few more of these to do, then I'm going to vacuum up the entire room, and it's time for some grouting. There are two different types of grout I could use for the bathroom floor. There is sanded grout and then there is unsanded grout. Unsanded grout is for grout joints up to 1/8 of an inch wide, and sanded grout is for joints 1/8 to 1/2 inch wide. So I originally bought the unsanded grout because of my spacers. They are 1/16 of an inch wide, and that will work great with unsanded grout. But what I didn't realize until way into the project that each tile has a bevel to each edge, and that threw off my calculations by a lot. So that made my grout joints from 1/16 of an inch wide to 3/16 of an inch wide. So unsanded is out and sanded is in. Also, what that did, my terrible miscalculations, well, it wasted my time because I did all of that dry fitting from the start to make sure that I had a full tile at the end. And it didn't turn out that way. I had to cut off about 3/4 of an inch off the last row of tile. But, you know, it didn't feel good at the time because it was already a long day of laying tile, and I was already tired and I didn't want to do any extra work, but I had to anyway. In the long run, it turned out okay because you can't tell that I trimmed the last tile, and it looks pretty good. So let's get on to mixing up some grout. I got my kitchen tools out again. I don't need to mix up a lot of grout for the bathroom, so this size bowl should be the right size that I need. To mix up the grout, I am not going to use water. I know that sounds crazy, but this stuff will be used as a water replacement. It has water in it, plus additives for strength, so it will make the grout not crack over time. So I'm just going to put a few cups in here. Ooh, looks like milk. Oh, this is heavy. All right. Ooh. Let's do some mixing up here. And add a little bit more powder. All right, we're getting close to the consistency here. I'm looking for something like peanut butter. That looks pretty good. When it falls off the spoon like that, that looks like a pretty good consistency. Okay, gotta let that sit up, let it slake for 5 to 10 more minutes, and then I'm gonna give it another stir. And then it's time to apply it on the bathroom floor. Grout is applied with a grout float, and this is what it looks like. It's just a big chunk of rubber with a plastic handle on the back of it. And when I apply it, I just put a little bit on the edge like this. I know you can't really see that, it's black on black. And then I just squeeze it in to the grout joints. And to clean it up, I go at a 45-degree angle from the joint, and that way I'm not scooping too much of it out of there. When I was kicking all those spacer clips off, you probably heard some metallic sounds. That was the sound of them going down the vent there, and I had lost about 30 of them, but luckily I had already disconnected the vent because Caesar had lost one of his squeaky balls down there. So when I went down to the basement where I disconnected everything, I found his ball, and I found 30 of those wedges down there. This color is called charcoal, and I chose it for a couple of reasons. The first one is I thought that the dark color would go well against the gray of the tile. And the other reason is I know that grout absorbs dirt and other stains over the years, and possibly more so in an apartment because there's just more people moving in and out. And I don't always think or remember to use grout sealer. There's just not enough of me to go around. So that's just one of those jobs that just doesn't happen very often. So with a dark color like this, is it will hide any dirt or stains that happen to develop over the years. It took me about 15 minutes to grout the floor, and this room was about 8 by 9, and then there's a 2 by 2 closet over there. And you can see where I started, it's getting a little bit lighter in color, and that's because it started to dry. So I got my bucket of clean water and my sponge, which has got a little stuff on there. Let's use the clean side. And I'm going to start wiping away the excess while I still can. I'm going across each tile on a 45-degree angle, and that'll make sure that any grout doesn't get accidentally pulled out of the joint. This is a really dark color. I've never used a color this dark before. So I think I'm going to go through an awful lot of water trying to wipe up my mess. I figure a room this size, it's going to take 4 buckets. These are about half full, so 2.5 gallons, to get the first layer of the stuff off. And then I'm going to have to come back over again with at least 1 or 2 more washes just to make sure I get everything off of here that I don't want. Look how dark the sponge is. It's terrible. Okay, this bucket is really dirty. I'm gonna go dump it outside. Whatever you do, if you're doing a tile floor, do not pour this stuff down the drain. It will clog your pipes every time. After seeing all the grout on the floor tile, I was worried that this was going to be too dark of a color, but now that I'm cleaning it off, I'm really starting to like it. Every now and then I run across a spot like this that I missed with a grout float. So I just take a little bit of extra and squish it in with my fingers and then wipe away the excess. It looks great. That's it for the first wipe down. I'm going to give it about 15 or 20 more minutes before I do the second one, just because the grout is still very wet, and every time I run the sponge across it, it just pulls out more mortar. So I'm going to let this set up, and I'll be back in a little bit. This second wipe down is a whole lot easier than the first because there's just hardly anything left on the tile. All I'm doing is wiping up just that little bit of residue that was left from before. On the first wash, I was going across the tile on a 45-degree angle. Now, I'm just going with the tile just because the grout is still just a little bit wet. So it's a few passes like this, and then go over it again with the other side of the sponge, flip it over again, continue on, and then flip it again, and do just a little bit more. Then I go and wash the sponge out in the bucket, wring it out, and continue on to the next tile. Don't be like me and use a black bucket for your rinse water because you'll have no idea when it gets dirty. So please use a white bucket. It makes so much more sense. Well, I'm just about done with a wipe down in here. So I will be back in the morning when everything is dry to do the next step. Good morning. I'm just finishing up the room with the final wipe down. There's just a little bit of dust left behind from yesterday, and I'm using a microfiber towel to pick that up. If you look at the towel, there's just barely anything left to pick up, but I want to get that little bit up and make these tiles shine up a little bit more. Doesn't that look a lot better? And now that the grout's dry, it's taken on a much lighter tone, and I think it matches with the tile a whole lot better. I'm just gluing the toilet flange in place. And I'm using the style which has a metal ring on it. And the reason for that is years ago when I would remodel a bathroom, I would use a toilet flange style like this. This is the all plastic type. And over the years, some tenants would somehow end up breaking the edge of this track off, which is the part that holds the closet bolt in place, and that's what keeps the toilet attached to the floor. Now, this must be a pretty common problem because they do make a repair part for that. This is what the piece looks like, and it just mounts over top of the plastic flange like that. And even the 2 holes line up so it can be secured nicely to the floor. And what it does is it gives you a nice brand new channel for your closet bolt to line up into, and that will keep the toilet secured nicely back down to the floor again. Now, this is a great idea for repairs of some of my older work when I was using the plastic flange, but it's just so much better to go with a metal flange from the start because it'll keep me from having to come back out on callbacks to repair a toilet, which normally wouldn't have been repaired if I had used the right part from the start. So that's really why I use these from now on. And you know, if you think about it, the cost of this repair part plus the plastic flange cost about $6 more than it would be if you just buy this to begin with. To secure the flange to the floor, first I place a board across half of the flange, and then I turn the outer metal ring until just the narrow part of the track is exposed. Then I drill out the first hole with a diamond drill bit and put in the first screw to hold the alignment of the metal ring. Finally, I drill out the remaining 5 holes and secure the flange down with the remaining screws. Yesterday when I grouted the floor, I intentionally did not put any grout in the space between the tub and the tile. And if I had, I know that over time it would crack and fall out of there. So the reason for that is this is a vinyl tub and it has some flexibility to it. So just someone stepping in and out of the tub, bumping it just a little bit, over time there would be a crack between the tile and the tub. Also, if someone were to take a bath, fill the tub up halfway full of water and sit down in there, that's going to put some pressure on the side and it's going to put a crack in there eventually. So what I'm going to do instead of grout is this. This is a 100% sealant, silicone sealant, and it is made by the same company as the grout and it's the same color as the grout. So by putting this in there, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to make a nice rubbery cushion between the tile and the tub, and also it's going to make a watertight seal. So any water that would accidentally get spilled over the tub's edge won't go down through the floor and end up in my kitchen ceiling. I am really messy with caulking, so to make this job a lot easier, I'm putting down some masking tape. And prior to this step, I had cleaned the edge of the bathtub right in here with some glass cleaner to make sure there wasn't any dust or grease or anything else that could cause the caulking not to stick. For the best adhesion, I want to make sure I get as much caulking packed into that joint as I can. Now for the messy part, I'm just going to wipe as much of this off as I can. And before it dries, carefully and slowly pull off the tape. And there it is, a really nice looking watertight seal. What do you think, Caesar? Is this your new favorite floor? Oh, this ball reminds me, I got one more thing I gotta do. I gotta put this vent cover in before somebody loses his toys down the vent hole. That was the last thing to do on the floor, and it's also going to be the end of this video. I want to give a big thank you to all my new subscribers. I thought I would be at 9 for probably the rest of this channel's life, but I just looked today and I am at 163. I am just blown away, totally amazed that there are that many people that want to see what's going on in this house. Or maybe they just want to see this guy. I don't know. Well, if you like the video, hit the thumbs up button. If you are new to this channel, hit subscribe, and don't forget to ring the notification bell if you haven't done already, and that will let you know when the next video is going to come up. So, happy Halloween, and we will see you next time.
What I did get done was a lot of plastering. So maybe that's not a good idea, Caesar.
So what I use is a thing called a thing, yes. This is the brand thinset mortar I'll be using. It is a non-GMO product. I don't know what it's called. It doesn't break down over time from the use of this stuff. What's this called again? It is late. Oh gosh. I tried cutting this tool, and this is a tool, yeah. I'm a tool. So I will be back tomorrow morning to do the next step. Okay. And over the years, some tenants would somehow end up breaking the corner. There's no corners on the circle, are there? Can I give you one more piece of candy if you'll stay? That was a no. That was a definite no.